Hello, everybody, and welcome back once again to the Fans Talk Pro Wrestling Podcast. As always, I am your host with the most, Freddie Carlson, and I am joined by my good friend Angelo. Say hi to the wonderful people, Angelo.
Hello, hello.
And today we are back with another chronicle. Our last episode spent plenty of time going into the life, career, and different character changes for Bray Wyatt in his career. And today we will be doing more of the same and focusing in on more so on the modern era and career and character of the Monday Night Messiah, Seth Rollins, in an episode we are entitling The Rise of the Messiah. And so today we are preparing to discuss the career of Seth Rollins. We will spend a little bit of time going back, talking about his early days in PWG and Ring of Honor before coming to WWE, and we will summarize a lot of his early WWE time, but a bulk of this video will be spent talking about Seth's current role as the Monday Night Messiah, the character, how it's been portrayed, how it's been booked, and where we think it can go from here. As we did with Bray Wyatt, we will take pauses at points to reflect on Seth's career, and then at the end we will kind of summarize and hope to be able to figure out a good trajectory for this character in the future. And so, with that being said, we will return to the earliest points of Seth Rollins' career. So Seth Rollins was he became a professional wrestler and trained in the early 2000s, and he made his in-ring debut in 2005. He wrestled on various independent circuit companies all around the world, all around the United States. He ended up in PWG, where he teamed with Jimmy Jacobs to win the PWG World Tag Team Championships, defeating Roderick Strong and El Generico. El Generico currently is Sami Zayn in WWE. He would hold the titles for a little bit, and then eventually find his way over to Ring of Honor. He would debut with Jimmy Jacobs and Necro Butcher, and he would attack the Briscoes, and eventually they would form the stable known as the Age of the Fall, which would last for a little while. Seth Rollins was going by the name Tyler Black at the time, and he won the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championships alongside Jimmy Jacobs at Final Battle in 2007, defeating the Briscoes. They held the titles for a little bit, and then Seth Rollins began focusing more on the World Championship picture, kind of moving towards that scene. So Seth Rollins, obviously known as Tyler Black in Ring of Honor, moved his way on to the Survival of the Fittest tournament in 2009, which winning it and earning him a world championship opportunity, which he would cash in at Final Battle 2009, and he defeated Austin Aries to a 60-minute time limit draw. The rematch was set for a few months later, in which Black would win the title. Black held the championship for 210 days and 7 successful defenses, where he lost the championship at Glory by Honor 9 in August of 2010, losing it to Roderick Strong. So already we're talking about the very earliest points of Seth Rollins' career. I definitely think that he was one of the more successful indie guys to eventually get to WWE. From right off the bat, he was kind of riding that first wave of guys coming in after CM Punk to WWE. Him, Daniel Bryan, John Moxley, who's now known as then coming to WWE as Dean Ambrose. So, Angelo, if you have to kind of summarize in a short series of remarks regarding Seth's independent run, especially for the time that he competed on the Indies, what can you make of it?
So for his independent career, I feel like he was. I guess he wanted to start off being in a tag team with someone like Jimmy Jacobs, and I feel like that's probably where his character started to develop a little bit more, and even I think like his move set and his gimmick and everything, and then like you said, he went on to focus on the world title. He wound up winning that world title, and then I guess that's not only his gimmick, but I think his skill set and everything is probably what attracted people like Vince McMahon and Triple H to want to sign him to WWE.
Yeah, he was definitely a very obviously we all know how talented Seth is, and
Oh yeah,
what the WWE brass saw was definitely a sign of things to come in his inevitable WWE career, and we've seen so many good things come of Seth's career in his time with the WWE. So after signing his developmental deal on August 8th, 2010, Seth began to work some territorial dates for WWE, some dark matches ending up in FCW. Seth Rollins ended up becoming the first ever FCW Grand Slam champion, winning the FCW 15. It's called the FCW 15 Championship, which was a 15-minute Iron Man Rules Championship. Also, the tag titles alongside Richie Steamboat and the world title as well. Seth Rollins was the FCW champion until May 31st of 2012, after holding the title for several months. Um, and he then was involved heavily in the earliest days of the NXT rebrand of FCW, and he ended up winning the inaugural NXT Championship tournament called the Gold Rush Tournament to become the first ever NXT champion, a title which he would hold until January of the following year. Even though shortly after his title victory in August against Jinder Mahal, he made his main roster debut just 3 months later on November 18th, 2012, at the Survivor Series event, the debut of the infamous group known as The Shield, where Reigns, Rollins, and Ambrose marched into Survivor Series, attacked Ryback, and helped CM Punk retain the WWE Championship, immediately making a stake in the WWE as being a force to be reckoned with. And so we all know what ended up becoming of the Shield. They became arguably one of the greatest factions that the WWE has ever created. It wasn't a faction that was started elsewhere and then came in. These were three guys who were thrown together, and it was sink or swim on the main roster for them. And boy, did they swim. We all know that Roman wasn't the best on the mic at the time. He has developed over the years. No more suffering succotash promos like we had a few years ago. But Roman and Seth and Dean really started to develop and to become more as a team. And to, they had some great matches and six-man tags with the likes of the Team Hell No and Ryback at their first match on the main roster at TLC. Also being involved in stuff with The Rock. I mean, when you're triple powerbombing The Rock on Monday Night Raw 2 months after your main roster debut, that's a pretty big deal. And so, they got involved in plenty of things, and they ended up feuding with various different tag teams and six-man matches, eventually resulting in the Shield on May 19th, 2013, all claiming gold for the first time, and Seth Rollins being the victor as one half of the new WWE Tag Team Champions alongside Roman Reigns, a championship that they would hold until October, having some various fantastic matches against the likes of the Usos and also facing the primetime players in that time. And of course, the infamous match with Cody Rhodes and Goldust at Battleground, where they lost to the Rhodes brothers in that really emotional return to in-ring competition for the Rhodes family. Then the Shield began to feud with CM Punk before quietly turning babyface early in 2014 in a feud with the Wyatt family and subsequently with Evolution and the Authority. And the last match of the Shield took place on June the 1st, 2014 at the Payback pay-per-view as the Shield defeated Evolution in a six-man tag team elimination match. Anything goes, no holds barred. They clean swept the greatest, one of the other greatest factions WWE has ever created in Evolution. A more modern, older version of the group that ran roughshod over WWE about 10 years before the Shield did. And more of almost like a modern day Evolution, except without a bona fide leader. So, as we did before, Angelo, how do you sum up the run of the Shield from late 2012 to mid 2014 as they broke up the next night after that match with Evolution?
Right. So the whole thing with the Shield, like you said, they were definitely a dominant force. Just everything about them, like, the guys wearing the vest and the pants and everything, tactical boots, the gloves. It was just I don't even know. Like I remember like sitting in front of the TV and watching them jump over the barricade at Survivor Series and just triple powerbomb like Ryback. I'm like, yo, they just picked up Ryback, who literally was a dominant
at
force
the time.
when he debuted.
Yeah, they really came in and changed the game right off of the bat. You
Yeah.
know, obvious. So I wasn't very well versed on what independent wrestling was at the time. I didn't really watch it. There really wasn't many ways to, and I wasn't exposed to it at that time. So I didn't really know much of the history of especially of Rollins and Ambrose on the Indies. Now Reigns had a different track to WWE, but a lot of people held highly the performances of Ambrose and Rollins, especially Rollins, and we saw that as time went on. He truly became the guy in the Shield who was in there all the time. He was the longest. He was in the Royal Rumble match in 2014, you know, for 40 something minutes, alongside his Shield brothers entering at number two. And we've seen over the years Seth can go. Seth can get in that ring and he can have a run of 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes, which we've seen, and we'll get to in a little bit, his performance in that one memorable gauntlet match.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely was high on the Shield. I remember when they turned babyface in 2014. I was such a big Shield guy. I was saying, believe in the Shield. At any given moment, I could work it in a sentence back then. As a stupid 13, 14-year-old kid who was in love with the business and kind of took it to a level that it didn't need to be taken. But, yeah. So, we've discussed the earliest days of Rollins' career as well as his early days on the main roster in the Shield. June 2nd, 2014, just over 6 years ago at the time of recording, the Shield would be broken as Seth Rollins turned heel and joined the Authority in the infamous Plan B segment where he attacked both Reigns and Ambrose with a steel chair, and then transitioned into a suit-wearing maniacal heel where he later won the Money in the Bank ladder match and represented the Authority in various feuds, including against Dean Ambrose, Kane, and not Kane. Kane came later. Against Dean Ambrose, Randy Orton, and John Cena over the course of time. Rollins tried to begin a feud with Roman Reigns before Roman's injury took him out. Then he had J&J Security in the fantastic match against Dean Ambrose inside Hell in a Cell. Rollins worked as one of the best heels of the era for about a year before cashing in Money in the Bank at WrestleMania 31 in the infamous Heist of the Century. One of my favorite WrestleMania moments ever, and by far my favorite Money in the Bank cash-in. That place was rocking. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. I don't know about you, Angelo, but I damn near fell out of my chair when he came running into that ring, and in a matter of minutes, we went from a bloody main event with Lesnar and Reigns to Seth Rollins being the man to walk out of WrestleMania with the title.
Yep. No, the way that he just like his music hit and he just ran down that ramp, he wanted that championship and he got it. I mean, I wasn't sitting in a chair at the time. I was standing up, and I literally I was taking a sip of water, and I spit it out when the ref counted 3. And I said, "What the hell just happened?" It went from a main event between just Roman and Brock to Rollins being added into the mixture. I'm like, "Oh, great." This is awesome.
It was definitely a nice change from what we had been. Brock had been champ for a while, and the title wasn't really featured. And before that, it was kind of after, besides Daniel Bryan, I felt like there was a lull in the title period for a while, and Bryan's reign was cut short and whatnot. So Rollins really added some new life to the title in his matches with Randy Orton, and then Dean Ambrose. Then he ended up having a rematch with Brock. Then that unbelievable match with John Cena at SummerSlam 2015. I was there in person, and I love the match. That finish, I don't understand why Jon Stewart had to get in the ring. It's been 5 years, and I still can't figure out why they had Jon Stewart get in the ring. I mean, don't get me wrong, the story was kind of funny that they were kind of portraying at the time, him and Jon Stewart. But this is a world title match. Sorry, it's a championship versus championship match, winner take all, at the second biggest show of the year. Why is there a former talk show host getting in the ring and hitting your biggest name in the company with a chair, causing him to lose? So that was my gripe. Especially being there, it was kind of weird, but it was nice to see Seth win. You know, Seth was really being a workhorse at the time, having multiple matches, being with both championships. And the unfortunate abrupt end to his reign came in November when he blew out his knee on a live event in Ireland and was forced to miss 7 months of action due to knee surgery. His reign ended at 220 days, which should have been longer. He was gearing up for a big match with Roman Reigns at that year's Survivor Series, and I was really intrigued to see how that would go. And so Rollins was out for a little bit. He comes back with a great reaction at Extreme Rules 2016 after AJ Styles and Roman Reigns put on a classic match for the world title. He attacked Roman Reigns and got put right into the world title picture, defeating Reigns to win the title back for a second time at Money in the Bank, only to be defeated by Dean Ambrose, who subsequently was cashing in his Money in the Bank contract one earlier in the night. Rollins then moved over to Raw and was in the inaugural Universal Championship match, losing to Finn Balor, and then was turned babyface shortly thereafter when Triple H turned on him and kicked him out of the Authority after over 2 years of being the Authority's boy. So Rollins then working as a babyface, and now this was my feeling of it, and you know, tell me how you felt at the beginning, Angelo. After that immediate face turn, it really felt forced. You know, like when he came back in May at Extreme Rules to start off his feud with Roman, I almost feel like that would have been the moment to turn him face because the crowd was hot for him. He came out and that Jersey crowd popped on their feet screaming, losing their minds to see Rollins back in the ring, only for him to come out and cut a heelish promo the next night on Raw and immediately to show he's still the same guy he was when he left. And then you forcibly kind of make him a babyface a few months later just to shake things up and, you know, let Owens be the new Authority guy, so to speak. It just felt forced at first. It took me a little while to warm up to Seth Rollins being a babyface in 2016. You know? I don't know if it was different for you watching it, but that was my feeling.
No, yeah, I mean, for me, just like you, it almost didn't make sense because you had the reaction from the crowd. It should have been, you know, they should have just taken the opportunity when they had the chance, rather than dragging it out for, what was it, like 2 months? Something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I see what they did because you had the good stuff where the Shield was feuding with each other and the triple threat, and it worked best with Rollins as the heel and Reigns as like that tweener. Of course, Reigns had his suspension, and then Ambrose was the clear-cut babyface in the situation, so I could see it for that reason.
Yep.
Only for them to go back on it and make Rollins a babyface. Anyway, and it worked itself out because the fans eventually connected with him. I did too. It just took me some time. So Rollins began working as a babyface, feuding with Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens, trying to win the Universal title, but multiple failed attempts to do so. But Rollins then entered into his feud with Triple H, taking over TakeOver at TakeOver San Antonio, challenging Triple H to a match. Rollins and Triple H had a good match at WrestleMania 33, and then Rollins moves into a bit more of a mid-card role shortly after WrestleMania, feuding with the likes of Samoa Joe and Bray Wyatt, but eventually moving himself closer to a feud with the Bar. And Ambrose and Dean Ambrose ended up reuniting with Seth Rollins for the first time since the Shield broke up. They had a reign as tag team champions after defeating the Bar. Ended up getting involved in a storyline with the Bar, along with Miz, Kane, and Braun Strowman, and had a 5-on-3 handicap tables, ladders, and chairs match, which was a very weird, like. So it was TLC 2017. That was the show that was plagued by the mumps that took out Bo Dallas and Bray Wyatt and Roman Reigns from that show. All three guys were supposed to be featured in that show. Reigns and Dallas were supposed to be involved in the main event, and Bray Wyatt was supposed to wrestle as Sister Abigail, which, as bad as it sounds, I kind of just want to see what they were going to go with, but maybe better for the better that we didn't get it. And, that match, I mean, I don't want to spend too much time talking about it, but, man, that was a weird setup. A 5-on-3 handicap tag team tables, ladders, and chairs match, where the team that the Shield, who was supposed to face, was a weird combination of The Miz, Sheamus, Cesaro, Kane, and Braun Strowman, with the Miz Taraj being involved as, lackeys, and yet the Shield still won. And then the Shield wasn't even at full capacity because Reigns was out, so Kurt Angle
stepped in.
Man, I mean, it doesn't really have any bearing on this discussion, but that was a weird match, and I just wanted to make that reference. So Reigns comes back, the Shield works together for a little while longer, have a great match with the New Day at Survivor Series 2017.
Yep.
Ambrose hurts his arm a few weeks later, putting the Shield on hiatus. Seth Rollins ended up moving into a team with Jason Jordan, where Rollins would end up winning his third tag team championship with Jason Jordan. They would lose those titles a few weeks later at the Royal Rumble. Back to the bar. Rollins then competed in a 7-man gauntlet match a few weeks later, the week before the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, and this is the match I referenced earlier. Seth Rollins competed for over an hour and 5 minutes in that one match. He defeated Roman Reigns and John Cena in the same match. And I was very impressed that night. That was really the beginning of Seth. Like, I had been a fan of Seth. I had been, on it. I had been a supporter. I was obviously on it. I'm a fan of his as a babyface. I liked him. Not just because he was a face, but because he was so good. And that was the beginning of about a year-long stretch where Seth was that standard bearer guy, and that's what we're going to get into when we talk about the Messiah character. He went from such a high point to such a low point because of different things that went on, and it's like the fans were so high on him, and it just fell. And that was the start of it. He has that great performance in that match, the great performance in the Chamber, wins the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania, has a great run with the title, and all the way through the summer, his stuff with Ziggler was good. And I mean, Ziggler is very repetitive, but the stuff that him and Ziggler did was great, bringing in Ambrose again. And then eventually regaining the tag team titles, only for Ambrose to turn, and you're expecting there to be this big, heel Ambrose versus babyface Rollins match that's going to blow everybody away, and it just fell short and kind of flat. And let's be honest here, we could talk about Dean Ambrose's, issues with the WWE another day, but Ambrose clearly wasn't in it. Ambrose was not having fun. Rollins could see that, and I think it was reflecting. And so Rollins loses the tag titles. He loses the Intercontinental title to Ambrose. The title ends up being, moved away from Ambrose shortly thereafter. And then Rollins then wins the 2019 Men's Royal Rumble match. And this was the start of the peaking out of Rollins' character. He goes on to have many a week of storylines with the Shield, and the conclusion of the Shield, and Ambrose leaving, and then all of a sudden he turns his attention to Brock Lesnar, and now he's got this big match with Brock. And Angelo, you and I were there, WrestleMania 35, MetLife Stadium, Brock Lesnar versus Seth Rollins. That crowd popped when Seth defeated Brock.
Oh, when he pinned him right after the 5 or 7 curb stomps, something like that.
No, I think that one was only 3. I think
that one was only 3.
I think that one was only 3, but as the year went on, he started using that move way too much.
Way too much, yeah. But right after, right after he hit the last curb stomp and went for the cover, you hear the whole crowd counting with the referee in sync. 1, 2, 3, and then the second that is, you hear and new, and then the whole crowd's like, yeah, Rollins did it.
Yeah, and it was a quick match too. I mean, I know there was a pre-match beatdown by Brock, but that match was quicker than I would have expected a Universal title match at WrestleMania to be, and it opened the main show too, which was kind of crazy. But unfortunately, after his first title defense against AJ Styles at Money in the Bank a few weeks later, that's when the issues with the popularity started to peter out. various online interviews, podcast appearances, and social media comments from Seth Rollins started to make the crowd sour on him, including me. I mean, he said some things that were like a little suspect. He had made a comment about Will Ospreay and independent wrestlers and their bank accounts and all that. And we won't get into any of that. We're not here to talk about controversy. But those things started the downward trend in the eyes of the fans. And then just some poor booking that really negatively affected him. I mean, that stuff with Baron Corbin just went on and on and on. I mean, let's see. Let's look back on it here. So he faced Baron Corbin at Super Showdown and Stomping Grounds, which took place about 2 or 3 weeks apart from each other, and he beat Baron both times. So then you figure the feud's over, but no.
Then it was, I think, Extreme Rules.
Yeah, the Extreme Rules.
Becky versus
winner take all. Winner take all. Becky and Seth versus Baron and Lacey in the main event. And it's just like, this is so tough to watch. And then, obviously, Brock Lesnar cashed in Money in the Bank, regained the Universal title, and went on a few weeks of just throwing Seth Rollins around like a rag doll. I mean, he dropped Seth on a stretcher with one F5 in one segment, and I thought he was going to, like, die. I mean, so Seth becomes the number one contender for the Universal title at SummerSlam. He ends up defeating Lesnar for a second time in 3 or 4 months, and wins the Universal title again, and immediately enters into a feud with Braun Strowman. He won his 5th Raw Tag Team Championship on August 19th, 2019 with Braun Strowman, while also knowing he was going to defend his title against Braun at the Clash of Champions. They lose the tag titles that night, but Seth retains the Universal title. And then he was attacked by the Fiend. Okay, so we addressed this in great detail in the episode regarding the Fiend, and I don't really want to keep getting into it because we can't say much more else about it other than it was way too soon for that match to happen. Yep. Seth Rollins had just beaten Brock Lesnar twice in 1 calendar year. Twice. You know? Not once, twice. So you can't have Seth lose the Universal title that quickly after having that second big win over Brock in 4 months. Brock being your most unbeatable guy, and we've mentioned in the past that only about 10 or 15, between 10 and 15 guys in the entirety of Brock's 2-decade WWE career have ever beaten him clean. You know, and you can list it almost on just your 2 hands. And then on the other hand, Bray Wyatt, the Fiend character, was too soon for him to be in that spotlight because you can't have him lose. You're trying to build him up. So you book yourself into a corner, and that's how a Hell in a Cell match ends with a disqualification. It just bothers me. It just really bothers me. And this is really when the fans completely turned on Seth, because they were fully behind the Fiend, and they were getting mad about the booking, and they were mad about how Hell in a Cell ended. And they were really, you're booking Seth as the babyface and Bray as the heel, yet the crowd is fully behind Bray and not at all behind Seth, so you're now making your top babyface look like, an idiot because he's going out there and getting booed every week, while the guy he's supposed to be facing, who's supposed to be getting booed, is getting the biggest ovation every week. So you booked yourself into this corner, and Seth's losing all credibility with the crowd. So Seth now loses the Universal title to Bray Wyatt at the Crown Jewel event in November, or on Halloween, I should say. Ends up captaining Team Raw in November at Survivor Series, which they lose, and it was a rough night for Raw. Seth took the blame, and that would be the very end of this run of Seth Rollins, and the debut of the character we want to get into now, the Monday Night Messiah. So looking back on the earlier days in the time of Seth's run, from leaving the Shield behind, his initial heel run, turning to a babyface in the struggle to really connect with the crowd, then getting to being the top babyface in the company and everybody being behind him, and then falling back down to earth at 100 miles an hour. How would you look back on Seth's run for those 5.5 years or so?
So I think, honestly, Seth had a really, I don't want to say it was really great, but it was a really good run for him. I mean, he pretty much accomplished everything. You know, he's a Grand Slam champ.
Yeah.
I think a bulk of it is that bad booking decisions.
Absolutely.
Definitely, and I feel like you just said too, with the Fiend and everything, you have a babyface that's getting booed, and everybody is behind the Fiend, who the character just made his debut, and he's the hottest thing that you guys have, and you know you're trying. I don't know what they were trying to do at that point. I feel like it was just they wanted Bray to go in and that's it, become the guy, and I feel like that's where they kind of screwed Seth Rollins over. I don't think it was his fault.
Yeah, no, it definitely wasn't. It wasn't fully Seth's fault. Now, don't get me wrong. As we mentioned, he made some comments on social media and in podcasts that were just a little unnecessary and did not help him at all in the eyes of the fans because I know that they were not happy about them, especially like the time he criticized Will Ospreay.
Right.
But that being said, the booking decisions throughout the course of time either helped him entirely or helped him not at all. You know, it was kind of an up and down with him. And that was the problem. You know, you can't have, you know, I hate 50-50 booking. I really hate 50-50 booking, but the thing I hate just about as much is terrible booking. Actually,
Yes.
you know what? I probably hate that even more. 50-50 booking is one thing, but just bad booking in general really grinds my gears and pushes me to a level of annoyance that I did not know I have. Because they really, truly do not know how to properly book some guys sometimes. And it's case in point with The Fiend and with Bray Wyatt's entire character and Seth's entire first Universal Championship. No, actually, no. Both his Universal title reigns. The first one with the never-ending series of matches with Baron Corbin. And then the crap matches with Bray Wyatt. And I mean, it's not to say the matches themselves were crap. The Hell in a Cell match was. The second one was better, but I mean, how much can you do when you have terrible red light shining on you and you have no other alternative but to have The Fiend win?
Yep.
At the end of the day, I summarize it as the best run you could have asked for. 5 tag team title reigns, 4 world title reigns, 2 intercontinental title reigns, and 1 U.S. title reign in a 5.5-year span. It's pretty damn good for a guy who, you know, only 5 years before, you know, only a couple years before that was working, you know, 300, 400, 500 people crowds, and then he's walking out of 80,000 seat stadiums with the world championship over his head. So that's how I look at it. Now we move into the more recent times, and into the last about 8 months or so, Seth Rollins has been working as the Monday Night Messiah. This gimmick that kind of makes him see like the savior of the not the savior of the masses. That's Damian Sandow. The savior of Monday Night Raw, and he's coming to, you know, be the one who's gonna save everybody, and he's there to help everybody. And immediately I had questions. I'm like, I don't see this gimmick going anywhere. But Seth as a heel works at a level that is, in my eyes, really unheard of. And I was really getting into the stuff with Kevin Owens. They did a really good job of long-term booking that stuff. Obviously, the coronavirus pandemic did not help them because you obviously probably could have done a lot more with your story, and the match at WrestleMania could have had such a bigger payoff, but you work with what you're given in these times, and they did the best that they could. So the initial stable featured the AOP, Akam and Razor, as well as Buddy Murphy, the original 4 members of the other 3 being his disciples. Those disciples ended up being the ones who helped Seth. Seth Rollins won his 6th Raw Tag Team Championship alongside Buddy Murphy in early 2020, and held the titles for a couple of weeks before losing them to the Street Profits. And that kind of subletted the feud with KO. You know, it kind of took some time off, and Kevin Owens was leading a resistance against Rollins and his disciples, you know, with Samoa Joe and Aleister Black and the Viking Raiders and the Street Profits, you know, so many different guys getting involved, and I was really enjoying it. They had the big payoff match at WrestleMania where Kevin Owens did that amazing dive off of the WrestleMania sign, beats Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. Rollins then embarks on a feud with Drew McIntyre for the World Championship, and He was unsuccessful in a series of great promos, though. I really liked the promos. Seth's been with this whole gimmick. I think you can agree, Angelo. His promo work has been the best it's ever been in my eyes.
Oh yeah, no, without a doubt. His promos, like I always liked a good Seth Rollins promo, but this is at a completely different level. I don't want to say it's at an elite level, but it's somewhat up there.
Yeah, listen, he's no John Cena, he's no Paul Heyman, but he is really good on the mic. He can really make you get invested in whatever he's talking about. And I think as a babyface, his promos were just getting a lot more annoying. His voice, his mannerisms, his laugh as a babyface was getting to a point where I couldn't really listen to it anymore. So this change to this very deliberate tone, this very deliberate pace in which he talks, and his message is clear. That promo he cut about, I think he was talking about building the performance center, like right after they had to move there full time for the time being. Like that promo really was great, you know. And so then, after Seth Rollins' match with Drew McIntyre, he went into a catatonic state because he couldn't believe he lost, and it moved him into the feud he's currently in, where he rammed Rey Mysterio's eye socket into the steel steps. Austin Theory joined the group. AOP is out because of an injury to Razor. I believe it's Razor. He's out for some time. So right now it's Seth Rollins, Murphy, and Austin Theory. And they're currently feuding with Aleister Black, Humberto Carrillo, and Rey Mysterio. And it looks like Dominic's going to be getting involved. And that's where we are as of today with TV tapings and where we're at. Looks like there's going to be an ongoing feud with Seth and Rey, and possibly involving Dominic and of course the disciples. So compared to what else we've talked about in this video regarding Seth and the things he's done before this in his career, it's still very early in the time frame for the Monday Night Messiah character. Like I said at the very beginning, I didn't think this character had a lot of legs. I didn't think this thing was going to really get to take off. I didn't think it was going to get past a certain point, but it really has impressed me with its development. You know, the change of his theme song, his attire, his, like I said, his promos, his mannerisms, everything. He is doing so well with this character. I think this character could legitimately have at least a year's shelf life, if not more, if booked correctly. And so, Angelo, we'll kind of get into now. First of all, looking back on the earliest, on so far on the Messiah gimmick, what have you taken from it? What have you taken from this gimmick up to this point?
So I feel like since he lost to the Fiend and everything, I feel like this could be like Raw's version of the best gimmick. So SmackDown has the Fiend / Bray Wyatt, Raw has Seth Rollins / the Messiah, and it's just I don't even know like how to explain it really, but the whole thing with having disciples and making everybody like I guess getting everybody invested into believing that Rollins has them under his control is something that like it you can almost connect to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely seen the gimmick's gotten more and more believable because he has made himself seem more believable. At the very beginning, it was just kind of hard to get interested in. It was kind of hard to believe. But now he's really developed into this guy that, like, the whole stuff with Austin Theory joining makes you feel like, hey, this guy is really playing the role of a cult leader, which is what he should be doing. And it's getting better with every passing week, and I really like to think where this can go is very good. So the last thing we said we would do is kind of, now that we've gotten to this point in Seth's career, we've discussed the gimmick to this point. Where can it go from here? So obviously there's still a bit of a state of limbo with the shutdown, and WWE is just now putting superstars in their crowd as fans, and it's going to be I figure a good while before we can have actual fans in attendance, and things are going to inch back slowly even when that does happen. So the question truly becomes, what can happen for this gimmick to really extend its longest shelf life possible without growing stale and making people not interested anymore? That's really the question that needs to be answered. And for me, it's don't rush it to, like, so Seth being Drew McIntyre's first opponent out of WrestleMania was a good call. because Drew needed that big win to solidify himself as the world champion. And it doesn't hurt Seth any because he's a top tier guy. And it has actually helped his gimmick further itself because now it drove him to a point of insanity where he did something crazy and now he's trying to explain it away as a cult leader, and I'm loving it. So where can it go from here for me is you keep it steady. Theory and Murphy should be a tag team. They should be fighting for those tag team championships. They, with Rollins as their manager. I think they should take him from the Street Profits and have a lengthy reign. Not Rollins and Murphy, but Theory and Murphy. Rollins could very well be the guy to take the United States Championship away from Apollo Crews down the line. Heel guy. Now you've got them holding all the gold. They're not at the world title picture. Rollins is the top mid-card heel. He's got, all these mid-card baby faces are trying to come to him and trying to fight him and trying to take that title from him. And you can let it extend out. Have let Seth take the title from Apollo at SummerSlam, right? Then Rollins runs with the title for a bit. Hopefully you can get fans back in attendance soon. And by the end of the year, you could have another big babyface come along and feud with Seth for that title. Take the U.S. title. I hear Dominik Dijakovic might be coming up to Raw. He could be a good possibility. And then Seth can be a heel challenger for the WWE title going into WrestleMania next year. Doesn't have to win the Rumble. In my eyes, he shouldn't win the Rumble because he's already got that, and he can very easily, have a SmackDown guy win the Rumble, and they'll challenge the Universal Champion. Seth will face, if it's still Drew, face Drew again. If it's somebody else, let him face them. That's how I see it. Seth needs to be able to culminate this Messiah gimmick at WrestleMania with a world title win, and then it can peter out however you want to go from there. That's for me. Do you have anything that you would do differently going forward for him? Slow build, long term, rush it to the top. What do you say?
No, definitely a slow build would be the way to go with this. Like you said, have him work the mid card for a little bit longer. Definitely have Austin Theory and Buddy Murphy as tag champs. I feel like with that, like you said, Rollins being their manager, I feel like if they focus more on them, right? Like Rollins could be on the outside, like yelling instructions to them, and like be like their hype guy, and they could be a dominant tag team, and it makes like everybody think, okay, well Rollins really has control over these guys. This gimmick can work out. Then they help him win the U.S. title. Like you said, hold on to it for a while, then drop it to someone like Dijakovic if he winds up being called up, and then working his way into the main event spotlight again at WrestleMania, walking away with the title. And then after that, who knows? Like they could probably get a year and a half out of this gimmick.
Absolutely, if they book it right, they can get however much time they want to get out of any gimmick if they book it right. We've seen that in the past. Look at The Undertaker. He was booked very well for most of his career. I mean, the late 90s were a little weird, but he was booked very well. He was able to adapt with the times, and he kept being able to stay there. And the same basic gimmick lasting 30 years is kind of crazy. I mean, you can have the variation to the American Badass or whatever you want to say. It's just kind of crazy in my eyes. And the other thing, too, when it comes to Murphy and Theory being a tag team and Seth being their manager, or at least being their leader, that does wonders for two younger guys who are trying to connect with a crowd on the main roster. Now, Murphy, not so much. He's already benefited from being with Rollins as long as he has.
Right.
But also, he's got a lot of people behind him because of how good he is. And so he really won't have that bad of a time if he were to come away as a top-tier babyface after turning on Seth in the future. But for Austin Theory, this could be a big break for him. He never fit in with Andrade and Zelina and Angel Garza. I felt like he was just kind of there. So him being with Seth Rollins now is a perfect fit because Seth can help make this guy get comfortable on TV, get better in that ring, and he's not bad, but make him better, and like in the same vein that Evolution did for Randy Orton and Batista, can make Buddy Murphy and the Shield did for each other. This could be for Murphy and Theory, and maybe you bring in another guy or two. If AOP comes back healthy and this gimmick is still lasting, you can bring them back into the fold, And then you move Rollins to the world title, and you can have Theory or Murphy in the mid card. You can do a lot of things. I just want to see them do something really well with all of this. Don't let this die out like you did his babyface run. They've been doing well. I think the virus has helped them a little bit with this because they've been able to focus more on the promo stuff that Seth's been doing so well. But obviously losing a lot of the steam with the Owens feud not being able to be concluded in front of a crowd. So, to me, this has a lot of potential still left on its for it, and I'm just excited to see what may end up happening in the near future.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So, is there anything else you would like to add regarding Seth Rollins' career or the future of Seth Rollins, his Messiah gimmick, or anything else regarding Seth Rollins that we've talked about or maybe even haven't talked about before we wrap things up?
Yeah, no, so just a quick point about like Austin Theory, right? He's only what, 22, 23?
He's young, yeah, he's very young.
And he's I think he's a Grand Slam like Evolve champion. He's held the Evolve Championship, the Tag Team Championship, and I think they're like Internet or TV title. So there's a lot of promise for him. He's basically, I don't want to say an indie darling, but I feel like he's a newer Seth Rollins. So I feel like if Rollins takes him under his wing, this kid can easily become a great world champion by the time that he's probably like 27, 28 years old.
Oh, absolutely. For a guy who's 22 years old and he's already been, done as much as he has, he's been around the world. He's done a lot in his short career, and I think that he's got a high ceiling. And partnering him with an experienced guy like Rollins, in terms of being on TV, and an experienced guy like Murphy in the ring, and being able to learn from them and work with them and develop in front of a television camera and in front of a live audience even. I mean, live audience not so much because obviously with the situation that might not be the easiest thing to do, and he's also wrestled in front of live audiences for his entire short in-ring career. But being comfortable on TV and connecting with a crowd is very hard to do, and I feel like Austin Theory is just kind of standing there. He's not really doing much, and anytime he talks, it's kind of like, But Seth can help that.
Definitely.
And I'm excited to see where it will go, and I'm excited to see what it can possibly do in the future. I'm just hopeful that it doesn't end up being detrimental to any of these three guys, especially not Seth, who I feel like, he needs to find new gimmicks to stay at the top. For every big star, if you don't find new ways to keep yourself popular and keep yourself over, you'll fall down the card, and your time at the top will end sooner than it should. We've seen it happen before, and with Jinder Mahal, had a very short reign at the top, and as soon as his world title reign was done, he kind of slipped back down the card, and then all of a sudden he was back for a few weeks, and I haven't seen him in a month now. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens. But that is just about all we can say regarding the Monday Night Messiah gimmick and the entirety of Seth Rollins' career. Talking about the rise of the Messiah today, and the life and career to this point of one Mr. Seth Rollins. So as always, I've been Freddy, and he's been Angelo, and we were happy to bring you another wonderful episode. We hope that you enjoyed it. The Fans Talk Pro Wrestling podcast. We will be back very soon with a fantasy booking episode regarding the career of the Swiss cyborg Cesaro. I will be on here with my fantasy booking for the entire career of the Swiss Superman very soon. We will be discussing how I think his career up to this point can be changed and how to book him from here on out. I have completely rebooked his entire career from his WWE main roster debut in 2012. So that'll be our next episode coming very soon to the network. But as again, Angelo and I say, stay safe, stay well. Anything you want to add, Angelo?
I think you said it well.
All right. And we will be back very soon. And as always, never be afraid to be a fan. Thank you, and have a wonderful rest of your day.